So an interesting question just came in, more specifically about my research. What is it that I'm looking at? And I guess in one of the previous episodes, I've spoke about researching gangs. And I guess one of the things that I have been really interested in, I guess over the last 6 years, is the role of technology, the role of mass multimedia, and how that impacts the way in which children and young people behave. So in a nutshell, social media, violence, the correlation, the overlaps, which links to what my PhD essentially was all about. And I guess my PhD really looked at, more so specifically in terms of my research, was about how things like Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, WhatsApp, and all of those different mediums of which children and young people were utilizing to communicate, how that can cause the ripple effect of violent behaviors. So perfect example, something goes up on Instagram that may be seen as a disrespect to another individual or another group. And then subsequently something then goes up on another platform, and then something then ends up on YouTube, and then the content from those particular platforms or from the particular music video, for example, then causes individuals to behave in a particular type of way. And one of the things I started to notice was, I guess looking at it through a different lens, was what was causing some of our young people to get angry, what was causing young people to want to arm themselves with weapons and harm other young people, and why would they want to shoot other young people for whatever reason. And I guess that was kind of my initial interest, if I want to be more specific. At the time when I first started this research, I was just a youth worker, managing a local youth center. But what I started to see was a shift, and that shift started to enable me to kind of acknowledge there was something that was happening, and I guess social media, that was causing young people to behave. So to fast forward in terms of what my research generally is all about, is that correlation. What is it that happens on a social media platform that creates aggression, that creates disrespect, that creates the environment for people to feel that they need to respond, and then we see fireworks. And I guess when you look in your local papers, when you've heard any kind of news reports about whether it's an incident where a young person has sadly lost their life, or an incident where someone has been injured, one of the things that I look at in terms of my research is what is the cause, what are some of the root factors. Now there's so many factors that we can look at, and as for students, for policymakers, for researchers that watch these things, sometimes it is about ascertaining what those different factors are. And the factors are wide, it's not just one thing. Those factors can be anything, looking at poverty, deprivation, a lack of resources, racism, fear, adverse childhood experiences. It may be to do with overspending of funds and sporadic spending that I talk about sometimes in my work. It may be staff that are not competent, loads of staff that may have loads of qualifications, loads of skills, but are those skill sets matched towards the groups of individuals that we work with? It can be based on, issues to do with housing, issues to do with gentrification. There's some new things coming up now within the lens of looking at race, when we talk about adultification of children and young people. And I guess all of those different factors are present, but where I specifically look at in terms of my research is what's the added part. And when I look at all of the different reports and the different literature that's out there to explain the why, one of the things that I'm interested in is about what social media, what mass multimedia does in order to exacerbate some of the issues that we're worried and concerned about. And I guess one of the things that I guess I'm looking at more specifically is about what is it about things like YouTube and drill music and the content of drill music that forces or causes individuals to behave in a particular type of way. Secondly, what do we start to see in terms of the behaviors, in terms of the adverse impact of those particular comments and things that are on social media platforms? How does that start to impact other young people that may be watching and viewing those things through Instagram, through TikTok, through other mediums? And then what is the ripple effect of that on the community? So one of the things that I also talk about in my research is around consumerism, capitalist societies, and getting people to understand and acknowledge that a lot of young people that engage in things like drill music, for example, as it's a genre, which we'll probably talk about in another episode, that has become a cause of concern. one of the things I get people to look at is who's consuming it. Who are the people that are buying the music? You know, when you go to all of these different festivals, just go online and have a look. And I would say, you know, the most recent festivals, whether it's Wireless, whether it's Glastonbury, whatever it may be, just have a scan of the audience. And then the question you should ask yourself, are they drillers? Are they individuals that are involved in gangs, that are standing, that are consuming, that are buying all of the tickets, that are having most of the fun? And one of the things that you'll probably acknowledge is that the individuals that are consuming and the individuals that are in attendance are probably not the individuals that you probably see on the local estate, on the local street, with the hoods on, the balaclavas on, talking about individuals that they want to have a problem with, their ops, their so on and so forth. And that's what I'm very interested in looking at in terms of, well, what explains that? So my research helps us to understand what that is, but also the context of why you might find young people that move away from things like selling drugs, counterlines, exploitation, and why they've all now gone into this context of wanting to sell music because it's profitable, because they realize and they acknowledge that individuals that are making money, that are going number one, are becoming millionaires. So why wouldn't they? But then what is the kind of criminal way in which we look at these particular things, and how does the system respond from an educational perspective, from a criminal justice perspective, from a social care perspective, from a housing perspective, and all of those individuals that essentially are markers, individuals that engage on these particular platforms and make certain content towards individuals. What is the state response? And we as researchers, as policymakers, as individuals that are interested in this thing, is about understanding, well, what are the links? What is the link between social media, behavior, violence, and then also the state response? And all of these things should give you critical questions, or enable you to think about asking critical questions about making sense of what that is essentially all about. And I guess that's what my research is, helping us to make sense what's going on, with the purpose of putting forth some interventions, practical and realistic interventions, in order for us to respond. But I'm going to say it again. What I want to do, or enable you all to do, is give us some feedback. There might be some comments, there might be some thoughts, there might be something specific that you want me to elaborate on for the next episode or for the next season. In the comment section, just let us know what your thoughts, what your feelings are. It's something I might have said that I didn't elaborate on, and then we'll do it for the next show. So you heard me talk a lot about social media in the previous videos. And in two things I wanted to just kind of highlight really. You may remember I said that when I first started this work, I was really interested in the link between social media, violence, music, so on and so forth. And I just found one of my first reports that I wrote in 2017. Started the research in actually 2016, but it actually got published in 2017 with an organization called Catch-22. This is when I used to work at one of the universities in the West Midlands. And yeah, social media as a catalyst and trigger for youth violence, that actually is still online. If you just do a Google search, you will find it. Me and the doctor, Erin Rogers, did that. It was a really interesting project in doing that. And then that linked then to some of the other research that I did around drill music, narcissistic behavior, and the link between drill music, music and violence. And that may just kind of confirm some of the things and my worries that I presented, in the recent video. But there's also a couple of couple of books that I was also interested in on that term of narcissism. So there's a really interesting book called Criminal Identities and Consumer Culture: Crime, Exclusion, and the New Culture of Narcissism, by Steve Hall, Simon Willow, and Craig Ancram, that spoke about some of the kind of things that I talk about, is that consumer culture, why people utilize social media as a thing in order to make profit, which I don't blame them. Just think about the influence culture that we have right now. Brilliant. And this is a really interesting book that actually helped me to shape my thinking around social media presenting narcissistic behaviors. And it's actually for the next season, I want to talk about a little bit more of social media and narcissistic behavior. But a really interesting one as well, called Nothing But a G-Thang, The Culture and the Commerce of Gangster Rap, by Quinn. Really amazing book. Really kind of gives us that historical lens of how hip hop as a genre was created as kind of a social movement to fight against oppression, racism, injustice. how gangster rap was then introduced, and how consumer cultures and multinational corporations utilized that to essentially make profit. But the communities that were being impacted by the content from those music videos were the communities that were used and being exploited to make the music. We fast forward now and we talk about all of these different genres, drill music, grime, even other genres like rock and roll at some point in time have been blamed for society's problems. Whilst the blame essentially takes place, who is the people that are ultimately profiting? And this is a really good book that I've used within my own research around that.